ago, I told you if we were going to go through the book of Judges that there would be some strange stories. And I just want to remind you that you said, bring them on, right? All right, well, here is another one. Judges chapter 4. Judges chapter 4. And I'm going to read the entire chapter. That's the whole story. You need to get the whole story. And I'm reading this morning from the New American Standard Version of the Bible. You please follow along with whatever translation of God's Word that we have with you today. Judges chapter 4. Then the sons of Israel again did evil in the sight of the Lord after Ehud died. And the Lord sold them into the hand of Jabin, the king of Canaan, who reigned in Hazor. And the commander of his army was Sisera, who lived in Harosheth Hagoyim. And the sons of Israel cried to the Lord, for he, Sisera, had 900 iron chariots. And he oppressed the sons of Israel, notice the next word, severely. Not just regular oppression, but severely for 20 years. Meanwhile, verse 4, now Deborah, a prophetess, the wife of Lappidoth, was judging Israel at the time. Deborah is the only female judge in the book. And she used to sit under the palm tree of Deborah. She was so famous she had a tree named for her. She used to sit under the palm tree of Deborah between Ramah and Bethel in the hill country of Ephraim. And the sons of Israel came up to her for judgment. Now she sent and summoned Barak, the son of Abinoam, from Kadesh Naphtali, and said to him, behold, the Lord, the God of Israel, has commanded, go and march to Mount Tabor and take with you 10,000 men from the sons of Naphtali and from the sons of Zebulun. And I will draw out to you Sisera, the commander of Jabin's army, with his chariots and with his many troops to the river Kishon, and I will give him into your hand. Verse 8. Then Barak said to her, if you'll go with me, I will go. But if you will not go with me, I will not go. You got to remember to put the voices in when you read the Bible. I mean, sometimes I think we read the Bible so stoically that we don't see the emotion in the words. Can you believe that? That's what he actually said there. She said, verse 9, I will surely go with you, nevertheless the honor shall not be yours because of your terrible attitude. That last part may not be in your translation. The honor shall not be yours in the journey that you are about to take, for the Lord will sell Sisera into the hands of a woman. And then Deborah arose and went with Barak to Kadesh. And Barak called Zebulun and Naphtali together to Kadesh, and 10,000 men went up with him, and Deborah also went up with him to hold his hand. That part's not in there either. Now, Heber the Kenite. You think, well, wait a minute, is the story over? No, there's a little bit of information you need beginning in verse 11. Now, Heber the Kenite had separated himself from the Kenites, from the sons of Hobab, the father-in-law of Moses, and had pitched his tent as far away as the oak of Zananim, which is near Kadesh. All right, you got that detail? We'll come back to that. Then they told Sisera that Barak, the son of Abinoam, had gone up to Mount Tabor. So Sisera, being the good general he was, called together all of his chariots, 900 iron chariots, and all the people who were with him from Harosheth Hagoyim to the river Kishon. Deborah said to Barak, arise, for this is the day in which the Lord has given Sisera into your hands. Behold, the Lord has gone out before you. So Barak went down the Lord routed Sisera, and all of his chariots, and all of his army with the edge of the sword before Barak. And Sisera alighted from his chariot and fled away on foot. But Barak pursued the chariots and the army as far as Harosheth Hagoyim, and all the army of Sisera fell by the edge of the sword, not even one was left. Verse 17, now Sisera fled away on foot to the tent of Jael, the wife of Heber the Kenite. Remember that? We found out that Heber was in the area. For there was peace between Jabin, the king of Hazor, and the house of Heber the Kenite. And Jael went out to meet Sisera and said to him, turn aside, my master, turn aside to me, do not be afraid. And he turned aside to her into the tent, and she covered him with a robe. And he said to her, please give me a little water to drink, for I'm thirsty. So she opened a bottle of milk and gave him a drink. And then she covered him. And he said to her, stand in the doorway of the tent, and it shall be if anyone comes and inquires of you and says, is there anyone here, that you shall say, no, there's no one here. Turns out she was going to be telling more truth than Sisera thought she would be telling. Verse 21, but Jael, Heber's wife, took a tent peg and seized a hammer in her hand and went secretly, quietly to him and drove the peg into his temple, and it went through into the ground, for he was sound asleep and exhausted. And then the most meaningful sentence in the passage, so he died. And behold, verse 22, as Barak pursued Sisera, Jael came out to meet him and said to him, come, and I will show you the man whom you are seeking. And he entered with her, and behold, Sisera was lying dead with the tent peg in his temple. And so God subdued on that day Jabin, the king of Canaan, before the sons of Israel. And the hand of the sons of Israel pressed heavier and heavier upon Jabin, the king of Canaan, until they had destroyed Jabin, the king of Canaan. Yes, another odd story from the book of Judges. This one ends with a tent peg in the head. And everybody's probably thinking about that part of the story right now. But the first thing I want to tell you this morning is that the tent peg is not the important part of the story. Get that. And yes, this is another unusual story in Judges, because this story also involves Deborah the prophetess. She's the only female judge in the book, and she actually deserves the credit for the victory, because really, if you read the story carefully, you see that she was the one who was the respected leader in Israel. She was the one who actually rallied the troops. She was the one who planned out the strategy. But Deborah also is not the important part of the story. The most important part of this story, in fact, is not a human character at all. The most important part of this story is identified for us in verse 3. Would you look at verse 3? It says that Sisera, the general of the army, had 900 iron chariots. To understand this story properly, to get the mood of the people of Israel, you have to remember that the Israelites absolutely feared chariots. Chariots were the kryptonite of the Israelites. Chariots were the heavy cavalry of the ancient world. If you had two groups of foot soldiers going at each other, the side that had chariots would win. Chariot horses soldiers, or they could cut right through them. The wheels of chariots often had sharp blades up to 3 feet long on the wheels, so that as they drove through the foot soldiers, they would absolutely just cut down the soldiers that were around the chariot. Archers would stand in the back of the chariot with a big supply of arrows, and whether they were circling around or going through, the archers were just shooting at the enemy soldiers, while foot soldiers would be engaged in hand-to-hand combat, and all their attention focused right there in front of them. The chariots would just go around and hand out chaos. And it's not just what they were seeing on this field. Remember that it had been the chariots of Egypt that had confronted Israel right at the Red Sea and threatened to destroy them completely. If God had not opened the Red Sea and they had passed through, chariots would have been the end of Israel. And back in Judges chapter 1, we saw that it was chariots who defeated Judah once they got out of the mountains and got down in the valley. Judges chapter 1 verse 19 said Judah, had won these victories, but they could not defeat the chariots. For Israelites, chariots were scary. Chariots were problems. And the bottom line was that Israel really didn't believe that God could defeat chariots. That's fine. Oh, God is great. God is good. And we thank you for our food. But it's chariots. And here we are now, 4,000 years later. And there are some things in our lives that we just really don't believe that God can solve. Not a whole lot has changed. We come to church and we sing, "How great thou art." Today we sing, "Our God is greater than any other." And we quote verses. But there are things in our lives that we just have not given over to God, because deep down inside, we're just not sure that God can deal with it. Or at least we're not willing to trust Him with those issues. It was chariots who were the reason for Barak's wimpiness in verse 8. And I know I put on, when I read the verse and gave you the voice, but when you read the text, the wimpiness of Barak is pretty obvious. I mean, think about what you've heard. Barak has been called into action by Deborah. Deborah has become so important to Israel. She is such a respected leader in Israel that she's identified in verse 4 as a prophetess. There's not a lot of those in the Bible. Verse 5 says she had become an institution in Israel. She would sit under the tree that was named for her, and she would dispense wisdom and judgment. The end of verse 5 says the sons of Israel came up to her for judgment. That is a nice way of saying everybody listen to what Deborah had to say. She was a force to be reckoned with. In fact, I love the word that's in verse 6. It says that she summoned Barak. Men, this is for you. How many of you have ever been summoned by a significant woman in your life? Bunch of cowards, I don't see. All right, would you at least just go, yeah. She summons him. I love that word. And she told him, look, God is ready to she told him how many men to take, where to get them, where to go, and then in verse 7, she tells him how the battle is going to play out. And then in verse 8, we get, as a response to all of this, we get, will you go with me, hold my hand? Like everyone else in Israel at the time, with the exception of Deborah, Barak just didn't believe that God could handle chariots. He didn't believe it. There is a wonderful story in the New Testament, in the Gospel of Mark, chapter 9. Some of you will know it. The disciples bring a boy to Jesus. The boy's father is there also. The man tells Jesus that his disciples are not able to cast the demon out of the boy. The father proceeds to tell Jesus that the demon slams the boy around and throws him down and keeps him from speaking, makes him mute, and causes him even to foam at the mouth. When they bring the boy to Jesus, the boy immediately falls down and begins to convulse. The father is watching this and he's helpless. He speaks with great brokenness in the passage and he says to Jesus, he says, sometimes the demon throws him into the water. I got to go in and get him. Sometimes it throws him into the fire and he gets burned. Is there anything you can do to help us? Jesus looks at the man and says, all things are possible to him who believes. And at that point, the man, obviously at the end of his rope, cries out, I believe, help my unbelief. Those are incredible words, John. Did you hear what the man said? I believe. Help my unbelief. That story is Barak. I believe, but not like I should. I believe, but not like I could. Go back to the story. Barak is there on the mountain. Deborah is with him. Barak actually, if you read it, Barak trusts her more than he trusts God. And he and his troops are assembled for battle in verse 10. In verse 13, Sisera and those chariots arrive. In verse 14, Deborah says, now signal. It's the New Redneck translation. The older version says, arise, for this is the day in which the Lord has given Sisera into your hands. And you got to know that Barak is probably thinking, well, Deborah's here. She did come, and she says, go and get them. And here we go. And I have no idea how this thing is going to turn out. But she said, go. I'm going to go. And just as I said as we read the text, the next thing that happens is in verse 15. And look at the beginning of verse 15. Read it carefully. It says, the Lord routed Sisera. The Lord routed Sisera. It does not say Barak routed Sisera. It does not say the armies of Israel routed Sisera. It says the Lord routed Sisera. And all of his chariots and all of his army. And in the following verses, we're told the Canaanite army fled, that Israel pursued, and they were cut down to the last man. And meanwhile, Sisera jumps with a rug over it. So what we're supposed to understand here is that the victory had nothing to do with Barak, had nothing to do even with Deborah, as good as she is. The battle was won by the Lord. And in almost a humorous postscript, after most of this is over and Barak has finally built up a little courage, now he wants to be brave. And he is boldly pursuing Sisera. That Jael comes out and says, would you like to step over here for a moment? I'm sorry, I can't resist this. I think I've got things nailed down for you over here. And just as Deborah had said, because he refused to be brave, he did not get the honor of the victory. Human effort always trails behind God's providence. Learn that. Well, you may be thinking, man, I wish if there was a little more detail. How did all of this happen? Chapter 4 does not tell us. Chapter 5, however, gives us a clue. And if you've looked ahead, you may have noticed that chapter 5 looks like poetry. That's because it's poetry. It's actually the words of a song. The Bible calls it the Song of Deborah and Barak that they sang after the victory. And there are some clues in the song about how it all happened. If you want to look ahead, look at verse 4 of chapter 5, just to translate that into a little more regular narrative instead of poetry. It says, Lord, when you went out, look at verse 4, when you went out, the earth quaked and the heavens dripped. Turns out that guys with chariots are not so tough when the chariots drive into chasms that an earthquake has opened, and then the ones that are left bob their wheels down in a soaking rain and a flash flood. Wow. It's almost like God did something. The Canaanites should have listened to that story about Pharaoh. So why, 4,000 years later, do we still not believe that God can handle the logistical, the emotional, the financial, and the spiritual problems that we face? Why do we still not believe that God can handle the chariots in our lives? Why do we not trust Him? Why do we not listen to what His Word says? Why do we not do what His Word says? What I want you to understand this morning is that whatever you are facing can be fixed with a right relationship with God. I want you to get that. I showed this to a couple of people this morning. Y'all been saying you missed the children's sermon, so we'll end with the children's sermon this morning. You know what this is? I know some of you know. Young people, there's no way in the world you can know what this is. Unless you're really special. Young people, this is what a calculator looked like before 1972. Yeah, how many of you have a calculator? Well, if you have a phone, you have a calculator, right? They actually sell them separate from the phone. This is what calculators looked like before 1972. This is called slider. It has a series of well, I don't know what I'm talking about, I can't even say it. Logarithmic scales on it. Guys back before calculators could use one of these things so fast that they could probably do math faster than you can do on a calculator. They were really good at using these. These are the calculators of the ancient world. Ancient being before 1972. Now that you have that background, let me ask all of you a question. Anybody know the name Charles Kettering? You should. Charles Kettering is your friend. From 1920 to 1947, he was the head of research at General Motors. He is the man who is credited with inventing the electric starter. So every time you get in your vehicle and you turn the key or you push the button, you should say, "Thank you, Charles Kettering." He went on to be the founder of Delco Parts. How many of you ever bought something for your car that had AC Delco on it? You can say, "Thank you, Charles Kettering." When Kettering had a problem, he would call a meeting of his engineers. And he would bring them all into one room, except before you walked into the room, there would be a table outside. And there would be a sign on the table that said, "Leave your slide rules here." He allowed no slide rules in the room when they met to work on a problem. It's like saying, "Leave your calculator here. Leave your phone here." You know why Kettering did that? He said in our meetings, "I know what will happen. I will talk about a solution to the problem. And somebody will pull out their slide rule and jump up and say, 'It can't be done.'" And so his solution was to put a sign. It said, "Leave your slide rule here and come in and let's talk." What I want you to understand this morning is that some of you have been trying to get by with the slide rule of logic, the slide rule of human effort, the slide rule of doing it your way, the slide rule of not trusting God. And what I would say to you this morning is it's time to leave that right here and listen to what God says about your problem. Turn it over to Him. Trust Him and obey Him. Just Father, thank you for the opportunity that we have today to stand in this place and to proclaim that you are our God. We've had the opportunity to say today that you are great. We've had the opportunity today to pray. We've had the opportunity to give. We've had the opportunity to read your word and to hear in your book that you are able to handle even the chariots of life. All that remains, Father, is that we do something about that we actually turn over the issues in our life to you. What are we holding back? What do we think that you can't do? It's time for us to leave those problems at the altar. Would you help us, Father? We believe. Help our unbelief. Stepping out by faith, turning things over to you is not simple. Don't believe that for a moment. It takes a lot of courage. And it's that courage that we're asking you help us to be obedient to what you're leading us to do. We ask in Jesus' name. Amen. Brother Steve's going to lead us in a chorus. This is our invitation time. The altar's open. You may want to spend some time at the altar. There may be a decision you want to share with your church. Whatever God's leading you to do.